The sky above Metropolis tore open like a wound in reality itself. And John, Homelander, the greatest hero America had ever known, fell through screaming. Not from pain, from rage, from the audacity of whatever force had dared rip him from his world, mid-flight, mid-sentence, mid-everything that mattered. The interdimensional breach sealed behind him with a sound like thunder swallowing itself, and he hung there for 3 seconds in stunned silence, suspended above a city that looked almost right but felt completely wrong. Below him stretched gleaming towers that rivaled anything in New York, but the architecture sang with an Art Deco optimism his world had abandoned decades ago. The largest building bore a massive golden globe, and painted across its face in letters 50 feet tall, Daily Planet. Not the Daily Planet he knew, some third-rate blog his PR team occasionally had to threaten. This was a monument, a declaration that truth still mattered in this place. Homelander's enhanced vision swept the streets automatically, cataloging threats, calculating angles. Thousands of people moved below like ants, but they moved differently than the crowds he knew. They walked with heads up. They smiled at strangers. A woman helped an elderly man with his groceries without filming it for social media clout. The wrongness of it made his skin crawl. Then his ears caught it. Screaming. Genuine terror. The sound of metal tearing. A construction crane 3 blocks north was collapsing, its supporting cables snapped, the arms swinging toward a crowd of workers with nowhere to run. Homelander's predatory grin spread across his face before he consciously chose it. This was familiar. This was opportunity. This was his entrance. He rocketed downward at full speed, cape snapping behind him, and caught the crane arm with both hands 15 feet above the workers' heads. The impact should have driven him down into the concrete. Instead, he held firm, muscles barely straining, and slowly, theatrically, lowered the twisted metal to the ground. The workers stumbled back, eyes wide, as Homelander landed in perfect superhero pose. One knee down, one fist planted, head bowed for exactly 1.3 seconds before rising to meet their adoration. "Everyone okay?" His voice carried that practiced blend of concern and confidence, the tone that had sold $1 billion in merchandise. "Don't worry, you're safe now." The workers stared. Not one stammered a thank you. Another pulled out a phone, finally someone with sense, and started recording. Homelander turned toward the camera, smile brightening, shoulders squared. This was the part where they worshipped him, where they understood they'd just witnessed the greatest. "Nice catch," a voice said from directly beside him, calm and warm as summer sunlight. Homelander's head snapped around, and his brain stuttered trying to process what his eyes reported. A man floated 3 feet away, arms crossed, suspended in midair as casually as Homelander himself, but radiating something that made every instinct scream danger. Blue suit, red cape, that ridiculous curl of black hair, and a symbol on his chest that Homelander recognized from 1,000 parodies in cheap Halloween costumes. The S-Shield. Superman's S-Shield. But Superman was fictional, a comic book character, a corporate IP owned by... "I'm Superman," the man said, extending his hand with a genuine smile that reached his eyes in a way Homelander had never managed. "Welcome to Metropolis. Are you injured?" That dimensional breach looked rough. Homelander's mind raced. Dimensional breach. This man, this thing, had seen him arrive, had watched him fall through reality and waited, observing, analyzing. The handshake hung in the air between them, an offered bridge that Homelander's every instinct warned was a trap. But the workers were still watching, the phone still recording. So he took it, gripped firm, and felt Superman's hand close around his with strength that made Homelander's bones creak. Not crushing, not threatening. Just there. Just real. Just sufficient to communicate a simple truth. You are not alone at the top of the food chain anymore. "Homelander," he managed, withdrawing his hand carefully. I was in the middle of something when this happened. Where am I exactly?" "Earth," Superman said, with what seemed like actual amusement. "But I'm guessing not your Earth. Metropolis, specifically. Year 2026, if that helps orient you." Those blue eyes scanned Homelander with obvious X-ray vision, and Homelander felt nakedness for the first time in decades. Your cellular structure is fascinating. Enhanced, but not Kryptonian, not magical. Something I haven't encountered before. The casual invasion of privacy, the clinical assessment delivered with a friendly smile. It was everything Homelander hated about being analyzed and everything he'd done to others. Like he forced his expression to remain heroic, concerned, slightly confused. Lost traveler from another world. Grateful for the rescue. Humble before the legend. Compound V, he heard himself say, giving truth because the lie hadn't formed fast enough. Chemical enhancement. Where I'm from, I'm the hero, the only real one. But if you're actually Superman, he let his voice trail off, injecting wonder and relief and carefully calculated deference. Superman's expression softened. You must have questions. Why don't we get somewhere more private to talk? The Daily Planet has a roof with a good view. We can sort this out, figure out how to get you home. He gestured toward the massive globe building, already rising slightly in the air. Every tactical instinct Homelander possessed screamed contradictions. You go with him. Get intelligence. Assess capabilities. Find weaknesses. Don't go with him. He's already categorized you as a threat. He's leading you into a trap. You're outnumbered in an unknown world. But the workers were applauding now, the phone camera still recording, and Homelander had built his entire existence on never showing weakness before an audience. Lead the way, he said, rising to match Superman's altitude. As they flew toward the Daily Planet building, Homelander's enhanced hearing caught something that made his blood run cold. Superman's heartbeat. Steady. Calm. Completely, perfectly genuine in its concern and welcome. This man, this alien god, actually meant his offered help, which meant he was either the greatest actor Homelander had ever encountered, or he was exactly what the legends claimed, a genuine hero. And Homelander had no idea which possibility terrified him more. They landed on the Daily Planet roof, and Superman gestured toward the railing overlooking the city. Beautiful, isn't it? I've protected this city for years, and it still amazes me every day. The people here, their resilience, their hope. He trailed off, then turned to face Homelander directly. What's it like where you're from? Your world? And there it was. The test disguised as casual conversation. Homelander felt the trap's teeth but couldn't see the mechanism. So he told a version of the truth, carefully curated. Darker. The heroes where I'm from were corporate, managed. I work for a company called Vought. They created me, trained me, branded me. I save people, but it's always for cameras, always for ratings. The genuine article, he gestured at Superman, not letting bitterness creep into his voice because some truths sold better than lies. We don't really have that. Superman's eyes narrowed slightly, not with suspicion, but with something worse. Pity. That sounds incredibly lonely, being engineered to be a hero rather than choosing to become one. He paused, then added quietly, For what it's worth, the choice is still yours. Whatever made you, you decide what you do with it. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character. And the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Hope shines brightest in the darkest night. The words hit Homelander like a punch he hadn't braced for. Choice. Agency. The idea that what Vought made him didn't define what he had to be. It was naive, stupid. You were the kind of childish optimism that got people killed in the real world. And yet Superman stood there, all infinite power and impossible virtue, proof that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't naive at all. Homelander opened his mouth to respond, but movement below caught his eye. On the street, a dark vehicle had pulled up to the construction site he'd just left. Figures in suits were interviewing the workers, their body language screaming government, authority, investigation. And one of them looked up directly at the Daily Planet roof, as if she'd known exactly where to look. Superman followed his gaze and sighed. That would be government response. They're probably already trying to figure out what you are and whether you're a threat. He turned back to Homelander with that infuriating smile. Don't worry, I'll vouch for you. We'll get this sorted out together. Together. Vouch. Sort it out. Every word a promise that Homelander would be protected, guided, controlled by someone stronger than him. The rage simmered just below his perfect smile, but he held it there, banking it like coals for later. "Thank you," Homelander said, and meant it in ways Superman would never understand. Because in that moment, he'd learned something crucial about this world. It had rules. It had power structures. It had a Superman who believed in redemption and second chances and all the weakness that came with genuine heroism. And where there were rules, Homelander had always found ways to break them. Where there was power, he knew how to take it. Where there was weakness disguised as virtue, he knew exactly where to apply pressure until everything shattered. He just had to be patient, be careful, be the hero they wanted to see until he understood this world well enough to dominate it the way he'd dominated his own. Far below, in the shadowed doorway of a building across from the construction site, a figure in dark armor observed through high-powered lenses. Batman had arrived in Metropolis within 20 minutes of the dimensional breach, his satellite network having caught the anomaly instantly. And he'd watched the entire interaction between Superman and the newcomer with growing unease. The new hero's smile never reached his eyes. His body language screamed predator wearing prey's clothing. And most damning of all, his heartbeat had spiked with rage when Superman offered help, before carefully controlling itself back to normal rhythms. Bruce Wayne had seen that pattern before. In Joker, in sociopaths who wore sanity like a mask, in enemies who smiled while planning murder. Superman saw the best in people. It was his greatest strength and his most dangerous vulnerability. So Batman would do what he always did. See the worst, prepare for it, and pray his friend's optimism proved him wrong. But something told him that this time, it wouldn't. The Watchtower conference room held the weight of judgment like a cathedral-held prayer. Homelander sat at the obsidian table, acutely aware that every hero surrounding him could kill him, or try to, and the knowledge burned like acid in his throat. Superman sat directly across, still radiating that infuriating warmth. To his left, Wonder Woman studied Homelander with eyes that had seen millennia of liars. To his right, Batman remained utterly still, a shadow given form and purpose. Let's start simple," Batman said, his voice like gravel scraping bone. "Tell us about your world." Homelander had prepared for this. 48 hours in Metropolis had taught him that this universe operated on narratives he recognized but couldn't quite predict. Heroes were genuine. Villains were theatrical. The lines between them mattered in ways his world had abandoned. So he told them a story carefully threaded with truth. Vought International. The Seven. Compound 5, creating superheroes as commodities. His own creation in a laboratory, raised without parents, trained to perform heroism for profit margins and Nielsen ratings. He watched their faces as he spoke. Superman's jaw tightened with barely suppressed rage, not at Homelander, but at the system that had created him. Wonder Woman's expression shifted to something almost maternal, a warrior goddess recognizing a child soldier. But Batman's face remained absolutely neutral, and that terrified Homelander more than any displayed emotion could have. "So you've never actually fought crime," Batman said when Homelander finished. "Not a question. An accusation dressed as observation." "I've saved thousands of lives," Homelander shot back, letting defensive anger bleed through because it sold better than calm deflection. "Stopped terrorists, natural disasters, threats you couldn't imagine." "For cameras," Batman interrupted. "You said yourself, always for cameras, always managed, always controlled." He leaned forward slightly, and Homelander felt pinned by that wide-eyed stare. "What happens when there are no cameras? When saving someone doesn't improve your ratings? When the cost of heroism exceeds the PR benefit?" The question hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Homelander felt his heat vision flickering involuntarily, rage and fear mixing into something combustible behind his eyes. This human, this powerless, ordinary human in a costume, was dissecting him with nothing but words and observation. "Bruce," Superman said quietly, a hand on Batman's armored shoulder. "He's not on trial here. He's asking for help." "Is he?" Batman's gaze never left Homelander's face. I've been monitoring Metropolis news feeds since his arrival. 7 heroic rescues in 2 days, all performed in locations with maximum civilian density and media presence. 0 patrols in areas without cameras. 0 response to police scanners. He's not helping people. He's building a brand. Wonder Woman spoke for the first time, her voice carrying the weight of divine judgment. Is this true, Homelander? Are you performing heroism, or are you actually a hero? The distinction should have been meaningless, should have been semantic wordplay. But in this universe, surrounded by gods who actually believe their own propaganda, the question carried implications that made Homelander's manufactured heart race. I am what I was made to be, he said, carefully, honestly, because the truth sometimes sold better than lies. Where I come from, there's no difference between the performance and the reality. Saving lives on camera saves lives. Period. If I need public support to operate, then building that support is part of heroism. He met Wonder Woman's gaze directly. Ma, you tell me, in a world where gods walk among humans, where aliens and metahumans and magic are real, how do ordinary people accept you without seeing you, without trusting you? I do the work. I save lives. What does it matter if cameras are rolling? It matters, Superman said softly. When you stop saving lives the moment the cameras turn off. The statement hit like a physical blow because Superman's super hearing had obviously been monitoring Homelander's activities far more closely than he'd realized. 2 nights ago, Homelander had flown past a mugging and suicide slum. No witnesses, no phones, no benefit. He'd kept flying. And somehow, impossibly, Superman had known. I can't be everywhere, Homelander said, which was true. Even you can't save everyone. No, Superman agreed, standing slowly. But I try. Every day, every moment. I try. Not because anyone's watching, not because it improves my image, but because it's right. He walked around the table and Homelander felt the primal urge to flee, to fight, to do anything except sit there while something infinitely stronger loomed over him with disappointed eyes. I want to help you, John. I want to believe you can be better than what Vought made you. But you have to want it too. The use of his real name, not Homelander, not the brand, but John, the designation from his containment tube, shattered something in Homelander's carefully maintained composure. How did he know? How did Superman know things that Vought had buried under a mountain of NDAs and corporate restructuring? Batman answered the unspoken question. I've been investigating your arrival. The dimensional breach left trace particles that tell a fascinating story. Your universe and ours are closer than we thought. Close enough that information bleeds through. Comic books, television shows, cultural echoes. We have stories about your world, and you have stories about ours. He pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. Tell me, does this look familiar? The screen showed a comic book cover. The Boys, issue number 1. Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson's names across the top. And on the cover, a twisted, murderous version of himself rendered in graphic detail, heat vision burning through a civilian airliner. Homelander's blood turned to ice. That's not... I never... Of course you didn't, Batman said. That's a comic book, a story. But stories come from somewhere, don't they? Reflect something real, even in exaggerated form? He stood, moving like a predator circling wounded prey. So I have to wonder, what truth is that story reflecting? What version of you exists in a world where the cameras aren't always rolling? Enough, Wonder Woman commanded, voice cutting through the tension like her sword through flesh. You accuse him of crimes he has not committed in this world based on fiction from another. That is not justice, Batman. That is paranoia. That's preparation, Batman countered. He has Superman's powers without Superman's restraint. He's a corporate weapon programmed to value image over substance. And now he's in a world where he's not the apex predator anymore. He turned back to Homelander. How does that make you feel, John? Being weaker than Superman? Slower than the Flash? Less experienced than Wonder Woman? For the first time in your life, you're not the strongest person in the room. Does that scare you? Does it make you angry? Yes. Yes. It made him furious. It made him want to burn this self-righteous detective into atoms to prove that costumes and contingency plans meant nothing against actual power. It made him want to scream that he was still Homelander, still the greatest hero alive, still deserving of worship and fear and everything that came with being a god among insects. But he didn't say any of that. Instead, Homelander let his shoulders slump, let moisture gather in his eyes, easy enough when rage and humiliation mixed correctly, and spoke with calculated vulnerability. It terrifies me, because where I'm from, strength is all that matters. If you're weak, you're used. You're discarded. You're nothing. He looked at Superman, then Batman, then Wonder Woman. I've spent my entire life being the strongest because the alternative was being Vought's disposable asset. And now I'm here, surrounded by people who could kill me without effort, and you're asking me to just trust? To believe you won't use me the way Vought did? Superman's expression cracked into genuine compassion. We're not Vought. We don't use people. We help them. Clark wants to see the best in you, Batman said, unmoved. Diana wants to give you a chance to choose honor. I'm the only one here willing to see what you actually are. A damaged weapon trying to decide whether to become a hero or a threat. He moved toward the door, pausing at the threshold. Prove me wrong. Stop performing heroism and start living it. Or prove me right, and I'll be ready. The door closed behind him with a finality that promised future confrontation. Wonder Woman stood as well, placing a hand on Homelander's shoulder with enough pressure to crack concrete if she chose. The Amazons have a saying, "We are not defined by our creation but by our choices." You were made a weapon. That does not mean you must remain one. She squeezed once, almost gently, and left. Homelander and Superman sat alone in the conference room, silence stretching between them like the space between stars. Finally, Superman spoke. He's not wrong, you know. About me wanting to see the best in you. It's what I do, sometimes to my detriment. But I also believe people can change. I've seen it happen, seen enemies become allies, seen weapons become heroes. He stood, offering his hand again. See, stay at the watchtower tonight. Tomorrow I'll take you on patrol. The real kind, without cameras. Show you what heroism looks like when nobody's watching. What do you say? Homelander took the offered hand because refusing would confirm Batman's suspicions. I'd like that, thank you. Superman smiled, that same genuine warmth that made Homelander's skin crawl, and left him alone in the conference room surrounded by technology centuries beyond Vought's best efforts and the echoing weight of impossible expectations. Homelander sat there for 17 minutes, absolutely still, listening with enhanced hearing to the Watchtower's systems. He heard Superman in the medical bay, discussing rehabilitation options with someone called Martian Manhunter. Heard Wonder Woman in the training room, her sword cutting through the air in patterns that suggested preparation for combat. Heard Batman's voice over comms from the Batcave, already running scenarios, building contingencies, preparing for the moment Homelander proved him right. And in the city far below, in a penthouse office that dripped with wealth and technological superiority, Homelander's enhanced vision caught movement. A bald man in an expensive suit stood at floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the Watchtower's position in orbit through instruments that shouldn't exist. Lex Luthor, the files had called him. Genius billionaire, Superman's nemesis. A human who'd built an empire on the premise that humanity didn't need alien saviors. Their eyes met across impossible distance, and Luthor smiled. Not warmly, like Superman. Not analytically, like Batman, but with recognition. One apex predator acknowledging another. Then Luthor turned to his desk, typed something, and Homelander's enhanced hearing caught the ping of a message being sent. His phone, provided by Star Labs to help him integrate, buzzed once. A single message from an unknown number. When you tire of being judged by your inferiors, we should talk. Humans must stand together. LL. Homelander stared at the message for a long time, weighing options and futures and the careful balance between maintaining his heroic facade and embracing the rage that Superman's mere existence provoked. Batman thought he was a weapon trying to decide his purpose. Superman thought he was a victim who could be redeemed. Wonder Woman thought he could choose honor. None of them understood the simple truth. Homelander had already decided. He would learn this world's rules, master its power structures, and bend them until he stood where he belonged, at the top, worshipped and feared and utterly, perfectly alone in his supremacy. But first, he'd need allies, resources, understanding. And if Lex Luthor wanted to provide those things while Superman played therapist and Batman played detective, well, that was just good tactics. He deleted the message and went to find his assigned quarters, already planning tomorrow's performance. Superman wanted to show him heroism without cameras? Perfect. Homelander would give him the most convincing performance of genuine heroism this universe had ever seen. And then, when the moment was right, he'd show them all what Homelander really meant. Gotham City wore its darkness like a second skin, and Homelander hated it on sight. 3 weeks of playing Superman's eager student had taught him many things about this universe. Its power hierarchies, its moral complexities, its nauseating insistence that heroism required sacrifice. But nothing had prepared him for Gotham's oppressive, rain-soaked misery. The city felt like it was rotting from the inside out, and even his enhanced vision couldn't penetrate the shadows that seemed to move with malicious intent. "Why are we here?" Homelander asked, floating beside Superman above the East End's decaying tenements. "You have an entire city that actually appreciates you. Why waste time in this cesspit?" Superman's jaw tightened, the only sign of displeasure he ever showed. "Because Gotham needs help just as much as Metropolis, maybe more. And because Batman asked us to meet him here." He descended toward a rooftop where a dark figure waited, cape billowing in the chemical-tainted wind. "He's been tracking something. Thinks you might have insights." Homelander doubted that. Batman had made his opinion abundantly clear. Homelander was a threat to be monitored, not an asset to be utilized. But he followed Superman down, boots touching tar paper slick with rain, and faced the dark night with carefully maintained neutrality. "Homelander," Batman said, without preamble, "tell me about Compound V, specifically how it's distributed in your world." The question came from nowhere, tactically disorienting. "It's Vought controls it completely. They create soups, manage them, monetize them. Why?" Batman activated a holographic display from his gauntlet. Images flickered in the rain, teenagers convulsing, their bodies rejecting something at the cellular level. 3 dead, 7 hospitalized. All of them showing signs of superhuman enhancement that burned out catastrophically. This started appearing in Gotham 2 weeks ago. A drug that promises superpowers. Most users die. The survivors. He swiped to footage of a young man tearing through a convenience store with strength he couldn't control, screaming as his own muscles shredded themselves. They don't survive long. Homelander's blood went cold. That's Temp V, temporary Compound V. Vought experimented with it but never went to market because the mortality rate was unacceptable, even by their standards. He moved closer to the display, analyzing the victim's cellular breakdown. "But this isn't from my world. Like someone here reverse-engineered it." "Who would have the capability?" Superman asked. "LexCorp," Batman said flatly. "They've been analyzing the trace particles from Homelander's dimensional breach. Apparently, they found enough to extrapolate the formula." He fixed Homelander with that wide-eyed stare. "Congratulations. You've been in this universe less than a month, and your existence has already created a black market super soldier serum killing teenagers." The accusation landed like a physical blow. Homelander felt rage igniting behind his eyes, heat vision flickering. "I didn't ask to be here. I didn't tell Luthor to—" "No," Batman interrupted. "You just made yourself highly visible, demonstrated powers that humans might want to replicate, and caught the attention of a man who's spent decades trying to prove humanity doesn't need alien saviors." He stepped closer, fearless despite the obvious power differential. "Luthor sees you as proof that superpowers can be manufactured, that humans can become gods through chemistry rather than divine accident or alien biology. You're his propaganda-made flesh." "That's not fair," Superman said, but his voice carried uncertainty. "Fair doesn't matter. Consequences matter." Batman pulled up another image. A penthouse office, Luthor's office. "He's been trying to contact you, hasn't he? Messages, invitations, appeals to human solidarity against alien oversight?" Homelander's silence confirmed it. He'd received 17 messages from Luthor in 3 weeks, each more tempting than the last. Offers of resources, understanding, on partnership between humans who understood what it meant to be surrounded by gods who'd never earned their power. He'd deleted them all, but Batman's tone suggested he already knew that was a lie. "I haven't responded," Homelander said, which was technically true. "Superman told me Luthor was dangerous." "Luthor is brilliant," Batman corrected, "and he's right about many things, which makes him more dangerous than simple villains. He's right that unchecked power tends toward tyranny. Right that humanity needs contingencies against meta-human threats. Right that Superman could conquer this planet in an afternoon if he chose." He paused, letting that sink in. "He's just wrong about Superman's character, and he's wrong about you being worth saving." "Bruce," Superman said, warning in his voice. "No, Clark. You've spent 3 weeks trying to rehabilitate him, teaching him what heroism means, showing him how to help people without cameras rolling. And what's he learned?" Batman pulled up surveillance footage, Homelander's recent activities, analyzed frame by frame. "He's learned to perform even more convincingly. Watch his eyes here. He's scanning for witnesses. Here, he's calculating the PR value of saving a child versus an adult. Here, he's deliberately positioning himself for optimal social media spread, even though he thinks no one's watching." The footage didn't lie. Homelander had been careful, but Batman's surveillance had been more thorough. Every rescue, every patrol, every moment of supposed genuine heroism, analyzed and exposed as the performance it was. "You're a sociopath," Batman continued with clinical detachment. "My high-functioning, intelligent, capable of mimicking empathy, but incapable of actually feeling it. You crave worship because you have no internal sense of self-worth. You defer to Superman because he's stronger, but you resent him for it. You're exactly what Vought made you to be, a weapon that looks like a hero." Homelander's heat vision blazed fully now, rain evaporating in crimson light. "You have no idea what I've been through. What it's like to be created as property, used as a commodity, denied every basic human connection." "I know exactly what it's like," Batman said quietly, and something in his voice made Homelander's fury pause. "I was 8 years old when I watched my parents murdered in front of me. I spent years consumed by rage and grief. I could have become a monster. You could have used Wayne money and resources to burn Gotham's criminal underworld to ash. Instead, I chose to become something better. Not because it was easy, because it was necessary." He stepped even closer, invading Homelander's space with suicidal boldness. "You've had 3 weeks to make that choice, to decide what you'll become, and you've chosen to keep being exactly what you were, which means you're not a victim anymore. You're just a villain who hasn't committed his first atrocity yet." The words ignited something primal in Homelander's engineered psyche. His hands shot out, grabbing Batman by the throat, lifting him off the ground with effortless strength. "I could kill you right now, snap you like a twig, and Superman couldn't stop me before you died." Batman didn't struggle, didn't show fear, but his voice stayed absolutely level. "Do it. Prove me right. Show Clark what you really are." Homelander felt Superman tense beside him, heard the Kryptonian's heartbeat accelerate for the first time since they'd met. One squeeze, one moment of honest rage, and Superman would know, would see, would stop pretending Homelander could be redeemed. But that was the trap, wasn't it? Batman had engineered this confrontation precisely to force revelation. Kill him and become the monster. Release him and prove nothing had changed. The performance continues, just with Batman's accusations hanging over everything. Homelander released Batman, letting him drop. "I'm not going to give you the satisfaction." "That's what I thought," Batman said, adjusting his cape with insulting casualness. "You're too smart to show your true face this early, so you'll keep performing. Keep learning. Keep building trust until the moment you don't need it anymore." He turned to Superman. "He needs to leave Metropolis. Leave Earth, ideally. Send him to OA for evaluation. Let the Guardians determine if he's reformable." "Absolutely not," Superman said, and Homelander felt shocked gratitude at the alien's defense. "He deserves a chance to..." The explosion cut off Superman's words. 3 blocks south, a building erupted in flames, the blast wave shattering windows across the east end. Homelander's enhanced vision caught civilians trapped on upper floors, staircases collapsing, fire spreading with chemical intensity. Arson, Batman said, already moving toward the Batmobile. Professional job. Probably targeting someone in witness protection. He glanced at Homelander. Here's your chance. Save them. You know cameras. No witnesses who'll remember your face. Pure heroism with zero benefit to your image. Let's see what you choose. Superman was already airborne, streaking toward the burning building. Homelander hesitated for exactly 1.3 seconds, long enough for Batman to notice, short enough to maintain plausible deniability, and followed. The building was a death trap, old construction meeting modern accelerants. Superman tore through floors systematically, pulling people from the inferno with methodical efficiency. Homelander grabbed a family huddled on the 4th floor, carried them to street level, and returned for more. The smoke didn't affect him. The heat barely registered. This was easy, mindless. Exactly the kind of work he'd done 1,000 times. But Batman's words echoed in his enhanced hearing even over the roar of flames. Zero benefit to your image. And it was true. These were Gotham's forgotten, poor, probably criminals themselves. Definitely not the kind of people who'd trend on social media or improve favorability ratings. Saving them was tactically worthless. The calculus was simple. Expend energy and risk for zero return, or let Superman handle it and preserve resources for opportunities that actually mattered. Homelander reached the 6th floor and found an elderly woman trapped under a collapsed beam. She looked at him with eyes clouded by cataracts. Probably couldn't even see his face clearly. Wouldn't remember him. Wouldn't tell anyone. Wouldn't matter. He stood there for 3 seconds, watching her struggle, calculating. Then something shifted in his peripheral vision. Batman, having somehow scaled the burning building's exterior, standing in the doorway, watching. Not helping, just observing. Waiting to see what Homelander would choose when he thought no one who mattered was watching. Homelander grabbed the beam, lifted it with barely suppressed rage, and pulled the woman free. He carried her down through smoke and flame, handed her to paramedics who didn't look twice at him, and returned for the next victim. 47 people. 47 lives that would never know his name, never worship his image, never contribute anything to his advancement. He saved them all, working methodically alongside Superman until the building was clear and Gotham's finest were hosing down the smoldering wreckage. Batman approached as Homelander stood catching his breath. Unnecessary, but the performance of exhaustion sold better than inhuman stamina. Interesting, the detective said. What's interesting? Homelander snapped. I did exactly what you wanted. Saved people without cameras. Proved your analysis wrong. No, Batman said. You proved you can make the right choice when someone's watching who you want to impress. That's not heroism. That's strategic calculation. He pulled out a small device, tossing it to Homelander. That's a tracker I planted on you 3 minutes into our conversation. It's been broadcasting your location to 17 different monitoring systems, including LexCorp's satellite network. Luthor's been watching this entire rescue. Homelander felt his world tilt. You told him where to find me? I created a controlled environment where your choices would reveal your character while simultaneously showing Luthor exactly what you are. Batman moved toward his vehicle. Now he knows you'll play hero when Superman's watching, which means he'll adjust his recruitment strategy, and I'll be ready for whatever comes next. The Batmobile's engine roared to life, and Batman vanished into Gotham's darkness, leaving Homelander standing in ash and rain and the bitter understanding that he'd been outmaneuvered by a human with no powers at all. Superman landed beside him, soot-stained but smiling. You did good work tonight. Those people are alive because you chose to help them. Batman set me up, Homelander said flatly. He's paranoid, Superman acknowledged. But he's also usually right. Not about you. Though. I see the potential in you, John. I see someone trying to become better. He placed a hand on Homelander's shoulder. Don't let Bruce's suspicions define you. Keep making the right choices. Eventually, they'll become habit rather than calculation. Homelander nodded, accepting the encouragement, playing the role of damaged hero finding his way. But inside, behind the performance, something had crystallized into perfect clarity. Batman was right, Superman was wrong, and Gotham had just taught Homelander a valuable lesson about this universe's true nature. Power wasn't enough here. Intelligence mattered, strategy mattered, and most importantly, appearance mattered more than reality. Batman had just proven it by sacrificing truth for tactical advantage. If that's how this universe operated, or Homelander could play that game better than anyone. His phone buzzed. Another message from Luthor. Impressive performance, but we both know that's what it was. When you're ready to stop pretending, I have a proposition. One that doesn't require you to be less than what you are. This time, Homelander didn't delete it. The LexCorp Tower rose from Metropolis like a monument to human achievement defying divine presumption. Homelander stood in the penthouse office, watching sunset paint the city gold, and wondered if this was what temptation actually felt like. Not the crude manipulations Vought had used, threats and rewards delivered through handlers and contracts, but genuine seduction wrapped in rational argument and infinite resources. Lex Luthor stood beside floor-to-ceiling windows, scotch in hand, a perfectly tailored suit making Superman's costume look like children's pajamas by comparison. You have to understand, Luthor said, voice carrying that reasonable tone that made dangerous ideas sound sensible. I don't hate Superman because he's alien. I hate what he represents. The idea that humanity needs saving by something superior to itself. He saved my life twice, Homelander said, testing the waters. 3 days since Gotham. 3 days of Superman's patient mentorship and Batman's obvious surveillance. 3 days of performance wearing thin under the weight of constant judgment. He's been nothing but kind. Of course he has, Luthor agreed, gesturing toward the city below. Clark Kent is genuinely good. That's what makes him so dangerous. He doesn't see himself as a conqueror or a god. He's just a helpful alien trying to do right by his adopted home. But ask yourself, what happens when helpful aliens disagree with humanity's choices? When Superman decides his morality supersedes our democracy? He turned, blue eyes sharp with intelligence that rivaled Batman's, but without the moral restraint. You've seen it in your own world, haven't you? What happens when someone with absolute power decides they know better? Homelander thought of himself, of the Seven, of Vought's manufactured heroes doing whatever they wanted because nobody could stop them. Chaos, he admitted. Corruption. Power without accountability breeds monsters. Exactly, Luthor smiled, Predator recognizing kindred spirit. Superman hasn't become that monster yet. Maybe never will. His farm boy morality runs deep. But the potential exists. The framework is there. On one bad day, one cosmic threat that requires absolute action, one moment where democracy moves too slowly for his liking. He refilled his glass, offered one to Homelander. I've spent my life building contingencies, not because I want to hurt him, but because someone has to ensure humanity retains agency in a world of gods. The scotch was 50 years old, probably worth more than most people earned in a year. Homelander took it because refusing would signal weakness. And what does this have to do with me? Everything, Luthor said. You're proof that gods can be manufactured, that humanity doesn't need to wait for helpful aliens or magical accidents. Compound 5, properly refined and controlled, could level the playing field. I give humanity the tools to defend itself against metahuman threats. He pulled up holographic displays, chemical formulas, genetic modifications, projected results. But the street version killing teenagers, that's crude, dangerous. A mockery of what the science could achieve with proper funding and research. You want me to help you recreate Compound V? Homelander said, understanding crystallizing. I want you to help me save humanity from dependence on Superman's mercy, Luthor corrected. Imagine a world where police officers had your strength, where soldiers could defend against alien invasion without praying Superman arrives in time, where humanity controlled its own destiny rather than hoping benevolent gods continue feeling benevolent. He leaned forward, intensity replacing casual charm. You know what it's like to be created as someone else's tool. Do you really want that for all humanity? Forever dependent on Superman's goodwill? Batman's paranoia, Wonder Woman's warrior code? The argument resonated in ways Homelander hadn't expected. He'd spent weeks watching Superman save people who viewed him as something between savior and deity. Watched humans defer to his judgment, trust his decisions, surrender agency because Superman was good and strong and infinitely reliable. It was exactly the relationship Vought had engineered between heroes and civilians, dependence packaged as protection. Superman would never allow it, Homelander said. If you start manufacturing superhumans, he'll shut you down. Will he? Luthor's smile turned sharp. On what authority? What law? He's not king of Earth, even no matter how many times he's saved it. If I develop compound Vi through legal channels, proper FDA approval, voluntary adult participants, what right does an alien have to interfere with human science? He activated another display. Legislative proposals, lobbying efforts, public opinion polls. I've been laying groundwork for years. The only thing missing was proof the science could work. Then you arrived, dimensional breach trailing evidence that superhuman creation is possible through chemistry rather than cosmic accident. Homelander studied the displays, seeing years of planning and billions in resources all focused on a single goal, proving humanity didn't need Superman. Part of him recognized the manipulation. Luthor was using him, just like Vought had used him, just like everyone with power always used those with less. But another part, the part that still burned with resentment at Superman's casual superiority and Batman's constant suspicion, whispered that maybe Luthor was right. What would you need from me? Homelander asked. Luthor's expression shifted to something almost genuine. Respect, recognition, the acknowledgement of one apex predator to another. Blood samples, tissue biopsies, detailed analysis of how compound Vi affects your cellular structure. Everything Vought never shared because they wanted monopoly control. He paused. And your public support. When this goes to trial, and it will, Superman will make sure of that. I need you standing beside me explaining why humanity deserves this chance. Why depending on alien saviors is slavery dressed as protection. Superman will hate me, Homelander said. I'm surprised by how much the prospect bothered him. 3 weeks of mentorship had created something he'd never experienced at Vought. Genuine respect from someone stronger than him. Losing that would hurt in ways he hadn't thought possible. Superman will be disappointed, Luthor corrected. He'll think I corrupted you, led you astray from heroic redemption. He'll never understand that you're making a rational choice between two forms of control. His benevolent oversight or humanity's self-determination. He extended his hand. I'm not asking you to betray him. I'm asking you to help me ensure he never becomes what we both know he could become. A tyrant with infinite power and perfect certainty in his own righteousness. Homelander stared at the offered hand, weighing futures. Side with Superman, or accept constant judgment and suspicion, and the grinding performance of becoming genuinely good. Or side with Luthor, embrace what he actually was, a weapon choosing its wielder, and help build a world where humans didn't kneel to gods. The choice should have been obvious. He'd spent 3 weeks suffering Superman's optimism and Batman's paranoia. Spent endless hours pretending to care about strangers, to value life beyond its utility, to become something Vaught's laboratories had never designed him to be. This was escape, permission to stop performing. Validation that his resentment of Superman's superiority was justified. His phone buzzed. Text from Superman. Patrol tonight. There's a neighborhood in Hobbs Bay that could use help. No cameras, just people. You in? Simple invitation. No judgment, no demands. Just Clark Kent, a most powerful being on the planet, asking if Homelander wanted to help anonymous people in Gotham's worst neighborhood for absolutely zero benefit. Homelander looked at Luthor's extended hand, then at Superman's message, and felt something crack in his carefully maintained facade. I need time, he said finally. It's a lot. Luthor's smile never wavered. Of course. Take all the time you need. But consider this. How many times has Superman asked what you need, what you want? Or has every conversation been about what you should become, what you should do, how you should change to fit his moral framework. He withdrew his hand. I'm offering partnership between equals. He's offering redemption from a position of assumed superiority. And only you can decide which relationship honors what you actually are. The words landed because they were true. Superman had never asked what Homelander wanted, only offered guidance toward becoming something better, something other, something less threatening and more palatable. It was benevolent control, but control nonetheless. Homelander stood to leave, and Luthor didn't press. One more thing, the billionaire said as Homelander reached the door. Amanda Waller has been asking about you. Task Force X, the Suicide Squad, metahuman criminals she conscripts for Black Ops missions. She's been petitioning Superman to hand you over, arguing you're too dangerous for civilian integration. Ice flooded Homelander's veins. Superman wouldn't. He's been refusing, of course, defending you in Justice League councils, on arguing you deserve rehabilitation rather than imprisonment. Luthor's expression showed calculated sympathy. But how long do you think that defense lasts? Every week you're here increases the pressure. Batman builds more contingencies. Waller makes stronger cases. Eventually, they'll outvote Superman's optimism with their pragmatism. He paused. Unless you have powerful allies who benefit from your freedom. Unless you become too valuable to cage. The manipulation was obvious, transparent. Exactly what Luthor wanted Homelander to hear. But obvious didn't mean wrong. Batman had made his position clear. Homelander was a threat to be monitored. Wonder Woman had expressed cautious doubt. Only Superman stood between him and Task Force X's explosive collars and suicide missions. I'll think about your offer, Homelander said, and left before Luthor could see how thoroughly the seed had been planted. He flew toward Hobbs Bay on autopilot, mind churning through scenarios and calculations. Superman met him at the designated coordinates, already pulling people from a condemned building before the demolition crew arrived. Apparently, 3 homeless families had been squatting there, and Superman had convinced the city to delay destruction until proper housing could be arranged. Thanks for coming, Superman said, genuine warmth in his voice. I know this isn't glamorous work. They spent 4 hours moving furniture, repairing plumbing, cleaning rat infestations. Work that required superhuman strength but no actual heroism. Just labor for people who would never know their names and couldn't repay the effort. Homelander went through the motions. Watching Superman interact with the families with perfect, unforced compassion. An elderly woman grabbed Superman's hand as they finished, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. God bless you, she whispered. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, Superman said simply. Because you needed help, and I could provide it. That's all that matters. The purity of it made Homelander physically ill. No calculation, no angle, no benefit. Just genuine belief that helping was its own reward, that these people mattered as much as anyone else, that their dignity and safety justified hours of unglamorous labor. I don't understand you, Homelander said as they flew back toward Metropolis. How do you maintain this? The caring, the constant vigilance, the absolute commitment to people who can never repay you and wouldn't understand the sacrifices you make? Superman looked at him with something like pity. Because they're people, John. That's enough. Their lives have value not because they can do something for me, but because they exist. Because they matter inherently, not instrumentally. He paused. Luthor talked to you today, didn't he? The question caught Homelander off guard. How did you? I can hear LexCorp's unique electromagnetic signature from orbit. When you flew there this afternoon, I knew. Superman's voice carried disappointment, not anger. What did he offer you? Partnership, Homelander admitted. Respect. The chance to stop being judged by impossible standards and just be what I am. Which is what? Superman asked. A weapon, a corporate asset, a god without accountability? He stopped mid-flight, hovering above Metropolis's glittering lights. Or someone choosing, every single day, to be better than what you were made to be. I don't know if I can be what you want, Homelander said. And for once, it wasn't performance, just exhausted honesty. You're asking me to care about people I don't naturally care about, to value lives that provide me no benefit, to become fundamentally different than what Vought engineered. I'm asking you to be free, Superman corrected. Free from Vought's programming. Free from Luther's manipulation. Free from the idea that your worth is measured by others' worship or fear. He moved closer. You're not a weapon, John. You're a person, and people get to choose who they become. Below them, Metropolis lived and breathed. Millions of people going about their lives, trusting that Superman would protect them, believing in symbols and heroes, and the idea that good would triumph. It was everything Luther warned against: dependence, surrender of agency, faith in benevolent gods. It was also beautiful, hopeful. A city that had been saved so many times it had learned to dream, rather than merely survive. Luther wants my help creating Compound 5, Homelander said. He says humanity deserves the choice to become superhuman, to defend itself without depending on you. He's right, Superman said, and Homelander's world tilted. Humanity should have that choice, but Compound Vi isn't the answer. It's just replacing dependence on me with dependence on LexCorp's pharmaceutical control. He smiled sadly. I've always said humanity doesn't need me, that my job is to inspire people to become heroes themselves through their choices and courage and compassion. But Lex doesn't want inspiration. He wants power, and he'll use you to get it if you let him. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Storm approaching from the east, thick with chemical smell that suggested industrial accident rather than natural weather. Superman's expression shifted to concern. Star Labs, something's exploded in their metahuman research division. They streaked toward the facility, and Homelander's enhanced vision caught what Superman's already had. Dozens of people trapped in a building rapidly filling with toxic gas. The fire suppression system had failed. The emergency exits were blocked. People were dying with every second of delay. Superman didn't hesitate. He tore through the wall and started pulling people to safety with perfect efficiency. Homelander followed, grabbing scientists and security guards and janitorial staff without distinction, working alongside the alien who'd spent 3 weeks trying to teach him that their lives had equal value. 17 minutes of brutal work. 83 people saved. 0 cameras. 0 witnesses who'd remember it was Homelander alongside Superman. Just anonymous heroism performed because it needed doing. As they flew away from the smoldering facility, Superman's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned, and showed Homelander the screen. News alert. LexCorp announces breakthrough in safe superhuman enhancement. Compound V trials beginning next month. He's not waiting for your answer, Superman said quietly. He's moving forward regardless. In using your existence as proof of concept, your arrival as catalyst, your potential cooperation as publicity. He met Homelander's eyes. You can't stop him by joining him. You can only become complicit in whatever comes next. Homelander stared at the announcement, seeing Luther's strategy crystallizing. With or without cooperation, Homelander was already serving Luther's purposes. His mere presence in this universe had given credence to the idea that godhood could be manufactured, that power could be democratized through chemistry, that humanity didn't need to wait for Kryptonian refugees to feel safe. What do I do? Homelander asked, hating the weakness in his voice. Choose, Superman said. Not between me and Lex. Between the person Vought made you and the person you decide to become. Between performing heroism and living it. Between power without purpose and purpose that transcends power. He started flying toward the watchtower. Batman's calling emergency Justice League session. Luther's announcement changes everything. We need to decide how to respond before... The explosion cut off his words. Not close, but massive enough to register seismically, even from this distance. Homelander's enhanced vision tracked the source, Gotham. Specifically, Arkham Asylum. The entire East Wing had been demolished, walls blown outward, and shapes were pouring into the city like demons escaping hell. Breakout, Superman said grimly. All of them at once. Joker, Scarecrow, Poison Ivy, Mr. Freeze. His super hearing caught something that made him pale. Bane just killed 3 guards. Killer Croc is heading for the water treatment plant. And Joker... He closed his eyes. Joker's heading toward Gotham Elementary. School's still in session. Homelander felt something cold settle in his chest. This was it. The impossible choice Batman had predicted would eventually arrive. Gotham's worst nightmares were loose, and they were targeting innocents with the strategic precision that suggested this wasn't random chaos. It was coordinated, planned, designed to overwhelm Gotham's defenders and prove something terrible about the city's darkness. Batman can handle it, Homelander said. It's his city. Batman's one man against dozens of supervillains, Superman countered. He'll need help. We all will. He was already accelerating toward Gotham. Are you coming? And there it was. The test Homelander had been dreading since arriving in this universe. Fly toward danger for people he didn't know, ulk in a city that hated him, to fight monsters that made Vought's managed villains look like street performers. No cameras, no glory. Just blood and chaos and the absolute certainty that nothing he did tonight would improve his standing in this world. Or refuse, and prove Batman right. Prove Luthor right. Prove everyone right who'd said Homelander was just a weapon pretending to be a hero until pretending became inconvenient. He thought of those homeless families in Hobbs Bay, the elderly woman's tears, the 83 people at Star Labs who lived because he'd chosen to help, the strange, uncomfortable warmth that had flickered in his chest when Superman said good work without irony or calculation. I'm coming, Homelander said, and followed Superman into Gotham's darkness. He'd wondering if this was what choosing actually felt like, or just another performance with higher stakes and better actors. Gotham Elementary sat in the heart of Crime Alley, a cruel irony lost on no one, children learning hope in the place where Batman's hope had died. Homelander landed beside Superman on the school's roof, and his enhanced hearing caught what had turned the Man of Steel's face to stone. Children's laughter inside, oblivious to the chaos spreading through Gotham like poison in veins, and underneath that innocent sound, the Joker's voice singing nursery rhymes with theatrical malevolence. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. He's in the auditorium, Superman said, X-ray vision already analyzing the situation. 217 children, 15 teachers, and enough Joker toxin to kill everyone in the building. His fists clenched. He's rigged the ventilation system. One wrong move, and then don't make the wrong move, Batman's voice growled through their comms. He was across the city dealing with Bane's assault on Blackgate Prison, coordinates tracking his brutal efficiency through a dozen simultaneous fights. Joker wants an audience. He wants you to rush in heroically and trigger his trap, so don't. There are children in there, Superman said, voice tight with barely controlled fury. Which is why you're going to be smart instead of fast. Batman's breathing was labored. He was fighting while talking, multitasking violence with tactical direction. Wonder Woman is engaging Poison Ivy at Robinson Park. Flash is containing Scarecrow's fear toxin at Gotham University. I'm handling Bane. That leaves you two for Joker and Homelander. A pause filled with weighted judgment. This is where you prove me wrong. Or prove me right? Homelander felt every eye in the Justice League watching through satellite feeds, waiting to see if the corporate weapon would risk his life for people who couldn't reward him. Luthor's offer whispered in his memory. Partnership, respect, freedom from impossible standards. He could leave right now. Let Superman handle it. Fly back to Metropolis and sign Luthor's contracts and stop pretending to be something he fundamentally wasn't. What do you need me to do? Homelander asked instead, surprising himself. Batman's response came after calculated hesitation, as if he'd expected different words. Joker knows Superman can hear his heartbeat, track his position. I analyze his chemical composition from orbit. He can't surprise Superman. But you... Another pause. You're unknown. Joker's never fought you. Doesn't know your capabilities or limitations. You're the variable he can't predict. You want me to go in alone, Homelander said, understanding crystallizing. I want you to go in quiet, Batman corrected. Joker's watching Superman through the windows, waiting for the heroic entrance, but he's not watching the basement. There's a maintenance tunnel that connects to the auditorium's subfloor. You phase through. I've seen your files, I know Compound 5 grants limited molecular displacement, and you position yourself beneath him. When I give the signal, you come through the floor and neutralize him before he can trigger the toxin release. That's suicide, Superman said. Yes, if Homelander miscalculates by even a second, then 217 children die, Batman finished, along with their teachers, and Joker wins. Again. His voice carried the weight of decades fighting this particular monster. I'm not asking Homelander to be perfect. I'm asking if he's willing to risk everything for people who will never know he saved them. That's the only question that matters. Homelander's enhanced vision tracked the scene below. The Joker paced the auditorium stage like a demented conductor, orchestrating fear in children too young to understand they were already dead if this went wrong. Purple suit immaculate. Green hair perfectly coiffed. That Glasgow smile splitting his face as he gestured toward gas canisters positioned throughout the room with artistic precision. You know what I love about children. Superman? Joker called out, knowing his voice would carry to the Kryptonians' ears. They still believe in heroes. They think you'll save them. Isn't that precious? His laughter echoed. Of course, belief dies so easily. One wrong move and they'll spend their last moments learning that heroes fail. That hope is just cruelty wearing a cape. That daddy's not coming to save them after all. Superman's heat vision flickered red in his eyes, rage barely contained. Homelander recognized the expression, had seen it in his own mirror 1,000 times. The fury of infinite power frustrated by impossible circumstance. The desire to just end the threat, consequences be damned. Don't, Homelander said quietly. That's what he wants. He wants you angry, wants you to make the mistake that proves his philosophy right. Superman looked at him, our surprise evident. Since when do you understand Joker's psychology? Since I realized he's Vought's marketing strategy given human form, Homelander said. Create crisis, force impossible choice, watch heroes fail, and claim it proves they were frauds all along. He started descending toward the maintenance tunnel entrance. I know the playbook. I lived it. Batman's voice carried something that might have been approval. Tunnel entrance is northeast corner. You have 4 minutes before Joker gets bored and triggers the toxin manually. Don't waste them. Homelander dropped into Gotham's underground infrastructure, and the darkness swallowed him like a living thing. The tunnels reeked of decay and chemical runoff, claustrophobic passages that pressed against his engineered superiority with their mundane filth. His enhanced senses tracked the route, left at the junction, straight through the collapsed section, up through the service shaft that connected to the school's basement. He phased through concrete and rebar, molecular structure briefly unstable as Compound V's less documented capabilities activated. The sensation was nauseating, reality sliding through him like oil through water, but he emerged in the school's subfloor exactly where Batman had calculated. Above him, through layers of old construction, Homelander's X-ray vision showed the auditorium. Children sat in neat rows, teachers maintaining desperate calm. Joker continued his performance, and now Homelander could see the dead man's switch in his hand. Simple pressure trigger that would release the toxin the moment his grip relaxed. Superman's still outside, Joker announced cheerfully, probably calling his friends, discussing strategy, being heroic and responsible. He leaned toward the children with mock conspiracy. Here's a secret. Heroes who hesitate are just villains who haven't chosen yet. Real heroes act. Real heroes save you without thinking about consequences. But your Superman? He's thinking so hard right now. Calculating odds. Measuring acceptable losses. The smile widened. Which means you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. A girl in the front row, couldn't be more than 8, raised her hand. Joker pointed at her with delighted madness. Yes, sweetie. Superman will save us, she said, voice wavering but defiant. He always does. Joker's expression shifted to something almost sad. Oh, honey, that's what makes this so delicious. Your faith, your absolute certainty. And in about... He checked a watch that probably didn't work. 90 seconds. You'll learn that faith is just another word for stupid. Homelander felt something ignite in his chest. Not rage, not calculation, but genuine fury at this creature who tortured children to prove philosophical points. He'd killed people before, casualties of Vought's managed conflicts, collateral damage from his own carelessness. But this was different. This was deliberate cruelty targeting the innocent for no reason except proving that innocence didn't matter. Batman, Homelander whispered into his comm. I can take him. Clean shot through the floor. Grab his arm before he releases the switch. 73% success rate, Batman said immediately, having obviously run the calculations already. Mean a 27% chance you miss the grab. Toxin releases. Everyone dies. So what's the play? You make him laugh. The response made no sense. What? Joker's grip pressure is consistent when he's performing, Batman explained, still fighting Bane somewhere in the distance. Homelander heard the sound of bones breaking, couldn't tell whose. But when he laughs genuinely, his hand spasms, weakens. That's when you grab, not before. How do I make a psychopath laugh? Homelander demanded. Tell him the truth, Batman said. Tell him what he wants to hear. That you're just like him. That heroism is performance. That you're only here because it serves your interests. Give him what he craves. Validation that everyone's just pretending. That morality is just marketing. That heroes are just villains who haven't admitted it yet. The instruction cut deep because it required Homelander to voice every dark truth he'd been hiding for 3 weeks. Every cynical calculation. Every moment of performed empathy masking genuine indifference. Everything Batman suspected and Superman refused to believe. And if I do that, Homelander said quietly, you win. You prove I'm exactly what you said I was. I don't care about being right, Batman growled. I care about those children living. So swallow your pride, become the monster I think you are, and save them. You can go back to performing heroism tomorrow. Tonight, be useful. Homelander closed his eyes, breathing through layers of concrete and shame. Then he rose through the floor with controlled speed, phasing partially solid as he emerged directly beneath Joker's feet. The clown stumbled backward, surprise flickering across his face before transforming into delighted recognition. Well, 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 Joker crowed. The new hero. Superman's pet project. Homelander, right? Love the branding. Very fascist chic. He recovered his balance, dead man's switch held carefully steady. Come to save the children? How disgustingly predictable. Actually, Homelander said, forcing casual indifference into his voice, I came because Batman asked me to. Figured I should maintain my helpful hero image. You know how it is. Branding, public relations, keeping the Justice League convinced I'm reformable. Joker's eyes narrowed with interest. Oh, do tell. You were right, Homelander continued. The lies flowing easily because they were built on true foundations. About heroes just being villains who haven't chosen yet. Where I'm from, that's exactly what we were. Corporate assets performing heroism for profit. Saving people because it tested well with focus groups. And you want to know the secret? He leaned closer, watching Joker's grip on the switch. It felt great. No moral complexity, no impossible standards, just power and profit and the clarity of knowing everyone was using everyone else. Joker's smile grew. Finally, someone honest. And here Superman keeps trying to convince me people are fundamentally good. He gestured wildly, and Homelander tracked the dead man's switch, still stable, still primed. So why the hero act? Why pretend? Because Superman's stronger than me, Homelander said. Nay, and that truth tasted like poison. Because Batman's smarter. Because this universe has actual consequences for villainy, and I'm not stupid enough to fight gods when I can just wait, learn. Build power until I don't need their approval anymore. He let his heat vision flicker red. These kids? I don't care if they live or die. But Superman does. And keeping Superman happy keeps me safe until I'm ready to stop performing. The children gasped. Teachers pulled them closer. And Joker threw his head back and laughed. Genuine, delighted, absolute validation of everything he believed about human nature. His grip on the dead man's switch spasmed exactly as Batman had predicted. Homelander moved with speed he'd been holding in reserve, crossing the distance before Joker's laugh finished echoing. His hand closed around the clown's wrist with carefully calibrated force, enough to prevent trigger release, not enough to break bones and cause reflexive clenching. He ripped the device away, crushed it, and held Joker suspended in the air with one hand around his throat. Although, Homelander continued, voice dropping to lethal quiet that only Joker could hear, there's one more truth you should know. I lied about not caring. Because somewhere in the last 3 weeks, Superman's stupid optimism infected me. Made me think maybe being better than what I was made to be actually matters. He squeezed slightly, watching Joker's eyes bulge. So, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to hand you to Batman. You're going back to Arkham. And every time you think about using children to prove your philosophy, you'll remember that a corporate weapon chose heroism over validation from a psychopath. That's got a sting. He threw Joker through the auditorium wall with enough force to ensure unconsciousness but not death. Superman caught the clown's body mid-flight, already securing him with Kryptonian restraints. Flash appeared at super speed to evacuate the children. Wonder Woman descended through the roof to handle the toxin canisters with Amazonian efficiency. Homelander stood on the stage, surrounded by staring children, and felt the weight of what he'd just said settle over him like a shroud. The Justice League had heard every word through the comms. Batman's test had required him to voice his darkest truths, and now they all knew. The performance, the calculation, the cynical core beneath 3 weeks of attempted redemption. And the little girl who'd defended Superman approached him carefully. "Did you mean it?" she asked. "What you said about not caring?" Homelander looked at her. 8 years old, blonde pigtails, eyes still wet with tears but filled with hope that refused to die, even after everything she'd just witnessed. He could lie, could smooth it over with heroic platitudes, could rebuild the performance that had just shattered. "I meant it when I said it," he told her honestly. 3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have cared if you lived or died. Your life wouldn't have mattered to me at all." He knelt to her level, meeting her eyes directly. "But Superman's been teaching me that maybe my first instinct isn't who I have to be. That I can choose to care even when it doesn't benefit me. And tonight?" He glanced at the dispersing toxin, the unconscious Joker, the children alive against impossible odds. "Tonight I chose. I'm still figuring out what that means." She hugged him. Simple, spontaneous, the kind of genuine affection Homelander had craved his entire manufactured existence but never actually earned. He stood there, frozen, having no idea how to respond to touch that demanded nothing and offered everything. "Thank you for choosing us," she whispered. Superman landed beside them as teachers ushered children toward emergency exits. "We need to talk," he said, voice carefully neutral. They flew to the watchtower in silence. The Justice League had assembled in the conference room. Batman still in armor stained with Bane's blood. Wonder Woman's sword unsheathed, Flash vibrating with nervous energy, and a dozen others Homelander barely recognized. All of them had heard his confession. All of them had heard what he actually was beneath the performance. "Well," Homelander said, standing at the table's head, "I assume this is where you vote on whether to hand me to Amanda Waller or just throw me in the Phantom Zone." "This is where we decide if you're actually trying to change," Batman said, "or if tonight was just another performance with higher stakes." "Does it matter?" Homelander asked, exhausted beyond measure. "You heard what I am, what I've been doing. 3 weeks of pretending to be better while calculating every angle, every benefit, every strategic advantage. Luthor offered me partnership. I seriously considered it. The only reason I'm here instead of LexCorp is because Superman's approval felt more valuable than Luthor's resources. That's not heroism. That's just cost-benefit analysis with extra steps." "But you saved those children," Superman said quietly. "Because Batman asked me to. Because it maintained my hero image. Because you chose to," Wonder Woman interrupted. "Regardless of motivation, you acted. You risked your life for people who could offer you nothing. That is the definition of heroism, whether you accept it or not." "I'm a sociopath," Homelander said flatly. Batman's psychological profile was accurate. "I don't feel empathy the way you do. Don't care about strangers automatically. Every heroic action I take is calculated decision, not moral instinct." "So what?" Flash said, surprising everyone. "Half the League has psychological damage. Batman's got PTSD from watching his parents die. Diana was raised on an island of warriors who solve everything with combat. Well, Cyborg's more machine than human and has to calculate his emotional responses through tech interface. We're all broken in different ways." He moved closer to Homelander. "What matters is what you do with it. Do you use your damage as excuse for villainy? Or do you make the hard choice to be better anyway?" The girl who hugged you, Superman said. How did that feel? Homelander wanted to lie, to deflect, to maintain some fragment of the armor that had protected him for 3 weeks. But the League had already heard his truth. Might as well finish the exposure. Uncomfortable, confusing, like I was getting something I didn't deserve and didn't know how to reciprocate. He paused. And good. It felt good. Which terrifies me because I don't know if I felt good because a child trusted me, or because I successfully manipulated everyone into thinking I'm redeemable. That's called introspection, Batman said. Sociopaths don't question their motivations. They don't care if they're manipulating people. The fact that you're uncertain about your own internal states suggests you're more capable of change than you think. Or I'm just a really good actor. Then keep acting, Wonder Woman said. Act heroic until it becomes habit. Act compassionate until you forget you're acting. The Amazons have a saying, fake it until you make it, is just another way of describing virtue cultivation. You become what you practice. Homelander looked around the table, seeing judgment mixed with something unexpected, hope. Not Superman's naive optimism, but genuine, yet earned recognition that tonight's impossible choice had revealed something real beneath the performance. Luthor's still moving forward with Compound V trials, Batman said, pulling up holographic displays. He used your arrival as proof of concept. The FDA has fast-tracked his applications based on dimensional evidence of safe superhuman enhancement. In 3 months, he'll start human trials. In 6, he'll have a product. And then what? Homelander asked. Humanity gets superpowers, levels the playing field with metahumans? And then chaos, Superman said. Power without wisdom, strength without restraint. Exactly what happened in your world, replicated here with Luthor controlling who gets enhanced and who doesn't. His jaw tightened. He'll use it to build private armies, to enforce his vision of humanity's superiority over metahumans, to prove that Superman isn't necessary because humans can defend themselves. He's not entirely wrong, Homelander said. Humans shouldn't depend on alien saviors. I've seen what happens when people surrender agency to heroes. It's just slower tyranny. Agreed, Batman said, shocking everyone. Which is why we need to stop Luthor's version and build something better. Regulated enhancement, voluntary participation, democratic oversight instead of corporate control. He looked at Homelander directly. And we need you to be the face of it. The example that shows enhancement can create heroes instead of weapons. The proof that choosing to be better matters more than how you were made. The proposition hit like physical impact. You want me to work with you? After everything you just heard? I want you to choose who you become, Batman said. Superman thinks you can be redeemed. Wonder Woman thinks you can choose honor. I think you're a calculated threat. But all of us agree that leaving you to Luthor's manipulation serves no one. He stood. So here's the deal. You join the Justice League. Probationary status. Full surveillance. Every action monitored and analyzed. You learn heroism not through performance but through genuine practice. And in exchange, we help you become more than what Vought made you. And if I fail? Homelander asked. If I can't actually change? If Batman's right and I'm just a weapon that looks like a hero? Then we stop you, Wonder Woman said simply. The same way we'd stop any threat. But we give you the chance first. That's what heroes do. Homelander looked at Superman, seeing patience and optimism that somehow hadn't dimmed despite everything. Looked at Batman, seeing calculation and contingency plans hiding behind offered opportunity. Looked at the rest of the League, seeing complicated humans and aliens and gods who'd somehow built functional team from their individual damage. Luthor will see this as betrayal, Homelander said. He'll go public with everything. Make me a villain in the press. Let him, Superman said. We'll tell a better story. The truth, someone created as a weapon choosing to become a hero. Publicly, imperfectly, but genuinely. He extended his hand one more time. What do you say, John? Ready to stop performing and start actually trying? Homelander stared at the offered hand, weighing futures again. He side with Luthor meant power, respect, freedom from judgment, and eventually becoming everything Batman feared, everything his world had already proven corporate heroes became. Side with the League meant constant scrutiny, impossible standards, and the grinding work of becoming genuinely better. But it also meant that little girl's hug, meant the strange warmth of Superman's approval, meant the possibility that he could be more than what Vought's laboratories had designed. "I want full transparency," Homelander said. "No secrets. You monitor me, but I get to know what you're seeing, what you're analyzing. I'm tired of being managed without knowing the game." "Agreed," Batman said immediately. "And if I screw up, when I screw up because I will, I want honest feedback. Not gentle encouragement, not patient understanding. Just truth about what I did wrong and how to do better." "We can do that," Wonder Woman confirmed. "And Superman." Homelander met those impossibly blue eyes. "Stop trying to see the best in me. See what I actually am, what I'm actually capable of, and help me become better than that. Not because you believe in me, but because you believe people can choose to change." Superman's smile was different this time. Not naive optimism, but genuine respect. "Deal." Homelander took the offered hand, and this time the grip felt less like demonstration of superior strength and more like genuine partnership between equals working toward common goal. "Welcome to the Justice League," Flash said, grinning. "We have t-shirts. Terrible t-shirts. You're going to hate them." "Probationary members don't get t-shirts," Batman corrected. "No, they get surveillance drones and psychological evaluations." "And friendship," Flash added. "Don't forget friendship." "I'm definitely going to regret this," Homelander muttered. "Probably," Superman agreed. "But that's what makes it heroism instead of performance. The choice to keep trying even when it's hard. Even when you're not sure you'll succeed. Even when every instinct says to quit." He released Homelander's hand. "Ready for your first official mission." "What is it?" "Luthor's holding press conference tomorrow announcing Compound V trials. We need Justice League presence to ensure he doesn't control the narrative. You'll stand with us, face the cameras, and explain why regulated, democratically controlled enhancement serves humanity better than corporate monopoly." Superman's expression turned serious. "See, he'll attack you personally. Call you traitor to your kind. Probably reveal some of your darker history. Can you handle that?" Homelander thought about Vought's managed press appearances, the scripted responses and corporate messaging that had defined his entire existence. Thought about Luthor's seductive offer of power without judgment. Thought about Batman's certainty that he'd eventually prove himself to be exactly what he feared. And then thought about that little girl's hug, and the choice he'd made in Gotham's darkness when no one was watching except his own conscience. "I can handle it," he said. "Not perfectly, not without mistakes, but I'll try." "That's all anyone can ask," Wonder Woman said. As the League dispersed to their various assignments, Batman pulled Homelander aside. "One more thing," the detective said quietly. "I'm still watching you, still building contingencies, still preparing for the moment you prove me right." "I know," Homelander said. "Good. I'd be disappointed if you stopped. Someone should be ready in case I fail. But I'm also—" Batman paused, as if the words physically hurt. "I'm also hoping I'm wrong, hoping you prove me wrong. Because if you can choose to be better than what you were made to be, it suggests anyone can, even me. And that's worth more than being right about your nature." He left before Homelander could respond, Cape disappearing into shadows with practiced theatricality. Superman remained, floating by the watchtower's observation windows. Homelander joined him, and together they watched Earth turning below, billions of lives continuing in ignorance of how close they'd come to catastrophe. How many times heroes made impossible choices to keep them safe. "Thank you," Homelander said finally, "for not giving up on me, for seeing potential even when I couldn't see it myself." "Don't thank me yet," Superman said with a gentle smile. "This is where the real work begins." 3 weeks of practice heroism was just introduction. Now comes years of actually becoming the person you're pretending to be. Days when you'll want to quit. Moments when my optimism feels suffocating and Batman's suspicion feels justified. Times when Luthor's offer looks infinitely more attractive than the grinding work of genuine change. Sounds terrible. It is, Superman agreed. And it's also the most important thing you'll ever do. Not saving the world. We do that regularly. But choosing, every single day, to be better than your worst instincts. And that's the real heroism. That's what actually matters. He turned to face Homelander directly. You asked me earlier how I maintain this. The caring, the vigilance, the commitment. Want to know the truth? Yes. Some days I don't, Superman admitted. Some days I hear every scream, every cry for help, every injustice, and I want to just stop. Declare myself king and fix everything through pure force. Become what Luthor fears, an injustice Superman became. The tyranny would be efficient, effective, and absolutely wrong. He looked back at Earth. But then I remember why I started doing this. Not because I'm stronger, because I could help. And choosing to help instead of rule, to inspire instead of dominate, to lift humanity up instead of making them dependent. That choice defines me more than any power. I'm not sure I can make that choice consistently, Homelander confessed. My first instinct is still calculation, still self-preservation, still wondering what I gain from every interaction. Then make the choice inconsistently, Superman said. Make it badly. Make it imperfectly. But keep making it. That's all heroism really is. Choosing, over and over, to do the harder right instead of the easier wrong. You won't always succeed. None of us do. But the trying is what matters. Far below, in Metropolis, Lex Luthor watched the Watchtower through telescopes and instruments, and smiled at the public relations opportunity Homelander's defection would provide. But he also made note of something unexpected. The genuine conviction in Homelander's posture as he stood beside Superman, the absence of performative heroism in his stillness. Perhaps, Luthor thought, the weapon was actually trying to become something else, which meant new strategies would be required, different approaches, more sophisticated manipulation. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight, in Gotham's shadows, 217 children slept safely in their beds, dreaming of heroes who kept promises and symbols that actually meant something. They didn't know Homelander's name, didn't know his struggle or his dark history or his uncertain future. They just knew someone had saved them when it mattered most. And maybe, Homelander thought as he watched Earth turn in infinite darkness, maybe that was enough. Maybe being remembered for the choice rather than the performance was what heroism actually looked like. Maybe Superman's stupid optimism wasn't stupid at all, just radically honest about how change happened. One imperfect choice at a time, building slowly toward something better. He had months ahead working with the League, years of proving himself. A lifetime of choosing between what Vought made him and what he decided to become. The work would be brutal. The scrutiny would be constant. Batman would never fully trust him, and he'd never fully trust himself. But for the first time since crashing through reality into this universe of gods and shadows, Homelander felt something unexpected settle in his manufactured chest. Hope. Not Superman's infinite optimism, not performance of emotion for cameras, just genuine, fragile, an utterly human hope that maybe he could become more than what he was. Maybe he could choose heroism over villainy. Maybe he could earn the symbol he wore instead of just performing it. Maybe, just maybe, he could become the hero that little girl already believed him to be. The work had only just begun. And for once, Homelander was ready to do the work, imperfectly, inconsistently, but genuinely, and see what kind of person emerged from the other side. The Justice League's probationary member stood at the edge of everything he'd ever wanted and everything he'd never known he needed. Homelander, John, had been engineered to be a god among men, created for worship and control. He'd arrived in DC's universe expecting to dominate, to prove his superiority, to finally stand unchallenged at the apex of power. Instead, he discovered something more terrifying than any threat: the possibility of genuine change. Superman's mentorship had shown him heroism without performance. Batman's suspicion had forced honest self-examination. Wonder Woman's warrior wisdom had offered choice instead of destiny. And the League, damaged, complicated, brilliantly imperfect, had extended partnership to someone who'd spent his existence being used by everyone who claimed to help him. Luthor's offer still waited, seductive and rational. Vought's programming still whispered that calculation mattered more than compassion. His own dark instincts still screamed that vulnerability was weakness, and genuine heroism was just elaborate suicide. But that little girl's hug remained, and the warmth it had sparked refused to die. The Compound Phi trials would proceed. Luthor would continue his crusade against meta-human dependence. Amanda Waller would keep watching for the moment Homelander failed, and Batman would maintain his contingencies, prepared for the day his suspicions proved prophetic. But Homelander would face it all not as Vought's weapon or Luthor's pawn, but as someone actively choosing, however imperfectly, to become better than what he was made to be. Because in a universe where gods walked as heroes and symbols mattered more than power, the greatest rebellion wasn't domination. It was transformation. And the most powerful choice wasn't control. It was hope.